Mexican government report in December of 2024 by one of Scheinbaum's top aides, or a powerful Mexican senator who sits on the National Defense Committee, also of the ruling Morena Party. Mexicans are in our territories: California, Nevada, Texas, Utah, New Mexico, Arizona, Kansas, Oklahoma, Colorado, and Wyoming. We are going to take back the territory that was stolen from us. This is not just bravado, by the way, Mark. Mexico and these other governments have set up networks, infrastructures inside the United States to make that happen. So they don't view mass migration from Latin America as just an economic phenomenon. They view it as a political one that is going to allow them to fundamentally change the United States by exerting sovereign control over large portions of the United States. And it's working to some extent, and it's only going to get worse unless we deal with it.
39 million people is what he said. You know, I know this for a fact by being out in Arizona and staying as long as I have, three different times working out there, that the Mexicans has a chip on their shoulders. Maybe not all of them, but a lot of them has a chip on their shoulders pertaining to what Sanchez done towards giving up that property back during the, I guess, Andrew Jackson era, whenever they owned the great deal of Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and even California. They still got a chip on their shoulder, and they're basically doing this subconsciously in invading us in a silent time form. That way they can create their strongholds and basically wiggle and work their way into our political system. And then the next thing you know, we'll have to be abiding by what they want us to abide by rather than our own culture. And yes, it's a form of invasion. Now, whether or not it's consciously or subconsciously, whether or not it's intentional or not intentional, I don't know. But I've talked to many, and I'm talking about dozens of different Mexicans, and whenever you really get to talking to them, they'll tell you, "Oh yeah, we hate that. We hate our leader that done that gave up our property. They still got a monkey on their back."
Reality, that is, that they want to change the citizenry, the culture, the demographics, because we're not assimilating people in our colleges and universities and K through 12 anymore. It is a reality, isn't it, Peter Schweitzer?
Yes, it's absolutely a reality. And by the way, they tell us this is so. This is not a theory. I mean, I quote extensively in the book from foreign officials, from those in the United States as well, who see this as part of the strategy of shifting American culture. Look, for example, what's happened to labor unions. They have been wildly radicalized, especially those of the unskilled labor unions. Why? Because migrants came in that were part of foreign organizations, terrorist organizations like the FMLN. They seized control of these labor unions and radicalized them. And they openly claim credit for this. The Democratic Party itself has recognized that mass migration is an enormous electoral advantage for them.
Exactly.
The first thing it does is it allows them to mint new voters. If you look at naturalization in the United States, by the way, I like immigration. My parents were immigrants, but this is weaponized immigration.
Right.
The biggest years of naturalization of new immigrants in the United States have all been re-election years for Democrats. 1996, 2012 for Barack Obama, and 2024 for Joe Biden. Why is that? Because they know that new immigrants tend to vote 80 to 85% for Democrats. So what they did inside government those years, and they'll continue to try to do it in the future, is they dumbed down the rules for citizenship. They would ignore hundreds of thousands of documents related to criminal background checks on new immigrants. They wouldn't worry about language requirements. Why? Because they wanted to mint new voters, because it is a core constituency of the Democratic Party. So you have this alliance between foreign adversaries who want to undermine the United States and Democrats who domestically see this as an opportunity for they themselves to gain a political advantage. And it's been a hugely important one for them, Mark. That's why they're fighting so hard in the streets right now to prevent deportations.
It's been a silent movement for probably the past, more so in the past 25, 30 years than ever before. by them having this chip on their shoulder, wanting to get as many of them as they can over here. Like I just got through telling my friend that's an investigator down in Dyersburg, that if you bring in 1 million people today, all Mexicans, do you really think 5 years from now you're still going to have 1 million? No way. You're going to have 1 million and possibly 100,000, or 1 million and maybe 200,000. They grow, they multiply. Well, if you get enough of them over here, eventually they'll not only take over your labor force pertaining to your jobs, they'll not only allow for the illegal drugs to come over here in bucket pools, but basically they'll sliver their way into our politics, and the next thing you know, they will affect our culture. They will affect our way of life, such as what I think it was Brezhnev over in Russia that said, we will take the American people over and never fire a shot. It's time for the American people to stand strong. If not, we're not going to be around long.
Subject, the group was talking strategy about American politics, but in an unusual place. While they were in Oklahoma, they were in the Mexican consulate. Mexico had a lot to lose if the wrong person won the U.S. presidential election in November. They viewed the wrong person as President Trump. The group included Mexican diplomats from consulates all across the United States. So this was a plan, a
movement,
plot, a strategy by official Mexico, was it not?
A movement.
Exactly right. One of the, I think, shocking things that people discover from the book is that China and the United Kingdom have 6 and 7, respectively, consulates in the United States. Mexico has 53, and they are involved in our partisan politics, basically supporting Democrats, and they are interfering in our elections. And the meeting that you laid out took place in May of 2024. There were consular officials. These are Mexican diplomats from Los Angeles to Orlando who gathered in Oklahoma City. They were addressed by the Mexican foreign minister. Officials arrived from Mexico City, and the only other group of people at this meeting, Mark, were Democratic Party activists, organizers. And the conversation, I quote from the transcript, we got a copy of the transcript, the conversation included statements like, we helped to turn California from red to blue. We helped to turn Arizona from red to blue. We need to turn the rest of the country from red to blue. President Trump and Republicans are going to learn, if you F around, you're going to find out. In other words, it was a threat because of the immigration policies you're pushing.
I'm going to go beyond that. Some of you that know me have heard me talk about Bobby Sue, that started out over in Lynchburg, Tennessee, right beside Jack Daniels. Still, or did have, I don't know if she still does, because she passed away during COVID, had 100 acres right there in Lynchburg. But she, saved her money and invested and done the right and wise things. And eventually she wound up having like 8 or 10, maybe more rental houses in downtown Nashville. I asked her, I said, who is your best renters, Miss Bobby Sue? And she, without a hesitation, said, oh, the Mexicans. They always pay on time. Even though whenever they rent out a piece of property from her, they'll start out with sometimes 10, 12, even 20 people living in the same house. And eventually they'll choose a leader, and in the process of the leader, they'll say, well, okay, we're going to buy you a vehicle. And then once they get that vehicle paid for, then they'll all work together towards buying another vehicle, the second one in line, then the third one in line, then the fourth one in line, and they can multiply. They can spread out. In other words, what I'm trying to say is this: the conglomerates in this country, the business people, the money people, the people that's got businesses and etc., are the very people that has helped to sell us downstream. They have given the farm away by allowing for all this intervention to happen. And I'm going to call it a silent, subconscious invasion that was being done subconsciously that most people didn't have no idea that was going on. Unless you have beat the bushes, got out into the fields, and actually identified what was happening, where it was happening, all over this great nation. Now, whenever I talk about, there's places in Florida, especially down towards Miami, that you really don't have no business going down there if you can't speak Spanish. I mean that from the bottom of my heart, because I myself was a victim towards being called to the Social Security office. And you would think, well, the Social Security office is a federal entity. And you would think everybody in the Social Security office would speak English. But no, whenever I went in there, I had to wait an hour and a half for an interpreter so that I could figure out what I was saying and what they were saying to me. I had to wait in the federal Social Security office in Miami for over an hour waiting for an interpreter. Now you tell me that's right. There can't be no way that that's right. And I started noticing whenever, they started changing our telephone directory. Oh, 1 for English and 2 for Mexico, 2 for Mexican, or different types of entities that was really pushing out favoritism towards the Mexican people. And there's no doubt, I don't have a problem in the Mexican people per se. I just have a problem in those that want to try to outwit us, or try to outsmart us, or try to manipulate us in some sort of way towards coming over here and basically thinking that they got more rights than what we have, even though they come over here illegal. That really gets to me big time. That really gets to me big time. To think that this has happened right up underneath our noses is really sickening. And like I said, unless you've been to places like Phoenix, Texas, New Mexico, now you go to New Mexico and you'll find a whole lot of people over there from Spain that are still kicking up about the property that got taken from them before the Mexicans had their property taken from them. People with old vendettas, people with old scores to keep. They didn't know how to do things in a legal, proper way back in the 1400s or whenever that all happened, pertaining to the Spaniards. They didn't keep their documents. They didn't keep their papers straight, and because of it, they got penalized. Of course, a lot of them was claiming property that property didn't even belong to them. Shysters. So, it's a problem. It's an ongoing problem pertaining to illegal immigrants that's coming over to America. And I really don't think that the vast majority of the true Native American people that live here, that are considered sovereign citizens, I really don't think that they realize the intensity of what has went on and how long that it's went on and the reason for it going on. Whenever I was doing my probe in the field, these were some of the facts that I was coming across. I was basically out there in the field for about 8 hours. Eight years. Looking, researching, analyzing, dissecting.
Politics for this era of Trump 2.0, 1,000%. And I think people are going to continue to push him to do that. But you can't take the politics out of politics. If he wins, he
One
wins.
good recruit.
I'm going to leave it at that, short and sweet, here on a Sunday. Thank you for listening. God bless America. God bless our troops. And God bless our endeavors towards which way America goes from this moment on. Shalom.